Happy New Year, teammates. Welcome to 2025. First episode of this extraordinary year. I hope we have as much fun as we had last year. Can't thank you enough for tuning in for our first 30 episodes. We've gotten a lot of comments from people, and we really encourage comments for people to think about any questions that might have been elicited from listening to our great guests and various episodes and topics we've had. But can't thank you enough for tuning in. You know our goal is to add value to people who are trying to build teams at home. They're trying to build their sports teams. They're trying to build their businesses. They're trying to build organizations. They're trying to be a building part of communities and societies and nations. And so, again, we're going to work hard in 2025 to see if we can continue to add value. And in this particular episode, we're back in the huddle because we like, after about 10 episodes, to think about some real takeaways that we got from it and that we had heard from some of the people with their comments. And so we're going to cover three topics here that we think were really great takeaways during the last 10 episodes. The first is one that we heard a lot of our guests talk about, is that everyone on the team matters and everything that we do matters. And so we're going to have an opportunity then to talk about the fact that, let me get to my number two, what's bringing your team together? There were so many of our guests and so much discussion about, here were some key things that helped bring our team together. And then the last one we're going to talk about is, we had a lot of our guests muse a little bit, think a little bit about figuring out what's next. What's the next thing that I need to do to add value to teams as a teammate? What's the next thing that our team needs to do? Let's hear a short soundbite from Coach Dan Hurley, two-time national champion men's basketball coach, UConn Huskies, talking about that reality that everyone is important and every single thing that we do is important.
Yeah, I know the process. I know the small wins along the way. I know the battles to build the culture and fighting every little battle along the way. Oh, wait, said player was just 30 seconds late for study hall, but I'm treating it like the greatest assault on our program in the history. And losing is just seeped into the bones of the organization, and how you have to scratch and claw and fight to build winning habits. And then, forget the talent upgrades and the improvement of your tactics and schemes, just to get people functioning in and around the program, whether it's the strength coach that you inherit or the academic support or the marketing people. It's not just a team that is performing badly, it's everything around the team is also carrying themselves, for the most part, in a losing manner.
As you listen to Coach Hurley, he's talking in depth about when you go in and you're starting something over somewhat. And it really doesn't matter what size organization it is, what size team. The message has to be loud and clear that every single one on this team matters. Every single thing that we decide to do matters. Well, you might also be in a situation where you've hit a little bit of a plateau as a team, and you have to go back. You're not starting over like Coach Hurley was referring to. You're trying to take your team to the next level and going and really assessing, where are we? Are we doing the right things? Are we doing them with the right people? Do we have the right people in the right positions? Some of the most impactful moments in our football programs over the course of years were when we really did a great self-assessment, and we ended up having some people change what role they were playing. Maybe it was a player changing position. Many times it might have been a coach changing position. It might have been a review of how were we going out and identifying who we were going to recruit, what we were going to spend our practice time on. In NCAA football, we were held to a certain number of hours we could be with our players per week. It was 20 hours, and only so many hours on the field and so forth. we had to decide how were we going to invest that time. And so we would sit and we would talk and we would go through it. Well, what are the most important fundamentals? What are the things that are the most difficult to master? What are the things that have the most impact on the outcome of the program? And so we would work extremely hard because everything we do matters. Every minute we spend. The same may be true in your company. The same may be true in the time you have with your children. You don't have unlimited amount of time with your employees or with your children. How are we going to make sure that we invest our time saying that, hey, everything we do matters. We're going to be as good as we can at everything. And then how do we evaluate and help everyone on the team understand that everyone matters? We can't have a weak link. We've got to make sure every person in the organization raises themselves up, raises their level of play. And so as I've listened to these last 30 episodes, it is really crystal clear to me that these very successful people who successfully built teams of all different kinds did it because they really did believe that every person on that team was important. That's something that is a must. They also believed that there is no thing that we do casually. We do things and we want to be the best at doing things. We want to refine things. We want to find better ways to do things. Those two things are so critical. Everybody matters and everything matters. Let's watch a quick clip from Rich Kramer. Rich is the former CEO of Goodyear. He had hundreds of thousands of employees around the world. Coach Hurley has 12 players and 5 coaches, and it's a different view of things. How do you, and you may be somewhere in between. You may have more than 15 employees, but less than 100,000 employees. How do you go about making sure that whatever size operation you have, that you help the team understand that everyone matters and everything matters?
Everywhere I'd go, someone would tell me they're the best at this, or they have the best performance of this machine, or the best customer engagement process, or whatever. And everywhere I'd go, it's completely different. And I'd say, we're one company, we're one team, we're selling tires, we're making tires. Yes, there are absolutely cultural differences and what have you, but the core of what we do is the same. So I said, why are we reinventing everything over and over again around the world? So I wanted to bring everyone together as one team. And I knew I had to start with my leadership team to start to do that, to cascade it down. And that was the impetus for calling you to say, how do we build this team to make sure that everyone on my leadership team knows that's their first team. Their allegiance is to our first team, and we have to agree on what we do, and then we have to go and disseminate that, not with differences and adjustments, because we agree, but not really. We agree, but I'm going to change it a little bit. No, we all agree this is how we're going to do it. These are the metrics. And Jim, I'm sure you remember this, but we still used it when I was there. Obviously, I've left the company. I'm retired now. But you made the comment that the shrug is worse than the bullet, and I can tell you we used that until I left. And obviously, the meaning of the shrug is worse than the bullet is the bullet impact is somewhat obvious, but the shrug is worse because it means the team doesn't agree. They're actually saying they agree, but acting differently, and that is death. Nothing can get done if we say we agree and then act inconsistently, particularly when you're talking about a global company with 75,000 people in it.
What a great lesson from Rich Kramer, from a gigantic operation, making sure that we have everyone know that they're important and everyone know that everything that we do is important. And the difficult part is making sure that as we go along the line, as we're sending the messages, developing the vision, developing the mission, developing the level at which we want to achieve, is that all along the line, everyone hears that message, believes that message. That's what's so incredible, I think, in my mind. Yes, cognitively, we all believe that, yeah, everyone's important, and yes, everything is important, but does everyone really believe that? We used to talk to our quarterbacks all the time about the fact that they knew that we shouldn't throw interceptions. They'd say, I know. And our response always was, do you know or do you know? Do you really know the impact on the entire organization when you throw an interception? So on the surface, I'm sure people would, if asked the question, is everyone important here? Yes. Is everything that we do critical? Yes. But do they really know how critical that is? And as we look at our entire organization, you can do this with regardless of what size your organization is. Think about all of the people that are a part of your team. Do you make sure that you do your part to help them understand that you believe they're important? And do you evaluate whether or not they do their part of the work to make sure everyone that our organization touches? One of the things I always enjoyed about some of our administrative people, whether it was in our football office or was at Youngstown State with some of our administrative assistants, that were the first person that when that student or that student athlete walked in the door, or that visiting person walked in the door, did they really have that glow on their face? Did they have that belief in that what they were going to do to greet that student, to meet the needs of that student, to greet that visitor? Did they really believe how important they really were? So evaluate that as you look at your team. Do your part, perhaps as the supervisor, the leader, is to make sure that your folks understand you believe that they're really important and that you treat them that way. And as we work to educate one another that, hey, every single thing we do, whether it's the way we answer the phone, the way that we represent our team in public, whatever it has to be, obviously with whatever it is we're trying to get good at, every single thing is important. And it really can be helpful for you to take a good look at that. And also the people outside of your organization that you work with. How about some of the vendors that come into your companies? How about some of the people that are maybe not working with you every single day, but do they understand how important you think they are? Do they understand how important that once they become part of your team, representing your team? Go back to Rich Kramer, giant organization. The real challenge is, can we get that across the many levels so that there aren't any of those shrugs, so there aren't any of those, well, I don't know why we're doing this, or, I don't know that I believe in this. Every single person needs to make sure that when you look at them, you can see they believe they're important for the success of the team, and they believe what they're doing is important, and they believe in what we've decided to do and be as a team. The second topic that was prevalent in many of the conversations with our last 10 guests is, okay, what do we need to do to bring the team together? You're at a different stage, a different place with every team. Sometimes you're starting over. Sometimes there's a crisis and you have to respond to the crisis. Sometimes you're just saying, hey, we've had a lot of success, and how are we going to continue to improve? Let's start with a tough one, and let's listen to Steve Steinhauer. He's the CEO of Huntington National Bank. He took over Huntington right at the time that the 2008-2009 financial crisis was happening, and times were very tough for financial institutions.
Well, 2009 was very difficult in our industry. It was very difficult for Huntington. So in meeting the team I inherited and was blessed to be able to work with many of these fine people and talented executives, as we came together, it was with a determination that we were going to succeed and get through this credit cycle, this economic tsunami, a 100-year sort of tsunami. And we had issues to deal with, and so we worked very hard to deal with those as a team, and certainly my role, sort of leading that, was important. And I'm a big believer in leaders lead. So I turn the lights on and I turn them off. And we went 7 days a week until Memorial Day in 2009. And but at that point, we felt we had it in a position where we were turning the quarter, and we could see our future. And to our board's credit, they supported a very ambitious management plan that was very different than what the industry was doing, and it caused a breakout moment. And you've had teams that have had breakout games and stages, and for us that was an inflection point, and one, as I look back on, is one of the telltales of why we're here today at about 4 times the size we were in 2009.
You can see that many of those fundamental things I'm sure that you've talked a lot about throughout the course of your career, your lifetime, is there's nothing good that happens without hard work. Sometimes, regardless of the situation, whether it's those tough times of the financial crisis or taking over a program or trying to continue to have great success, great things don't happen without hard work. The other thing that I thought as I listened to Steve in that soundbite, and then also in the course of his entire episode, is he talked a lot about the fact that we have to make those tough decisions. You know, those are things that we have to communicate with the members of the team. We need to get input. We need to make sure that we hear what their thoughts are. I think you've heard us on some of the episodes talk about that little acronym we used at Ohio State, WAYT. What are you thinking? We always wanted to know what our people were thinking. We wanted to know what the players were thinking. What are the coaches thinking? What are the athletic trainers thinking? What are the ticket people thinking? What are the marketing people thinking? Do they have some ideas? Because before we make tough decisions, before we make strategic decisions, before we set sail on a mission to get from this point where we are to the next point, we need to have great collaboration, great communication. Tough decisions need to be made. And then when we go forward, even though we might not be going forward exactly the way that everyone suggested, because everyone's idea can't necessarily take the forefront, once the decision on the mission and the direction has begun, we have to communicate, here's where we're going and why. And I think that's so critical. Let's hear a little snippet from Austin Carr. You remember Austin Carr, the great Cleveland Cavalier? He was the first-round draft choice, the second year of an expansion franchise, the Cleveland Cavaliers in the NBA. Expansion franchises have a tough time because of just how long it takes to get going. And Austin talks a little bit about here Coach Fitch and what he did to start bringing this team together and start building this team.
You know, Coach Fitch used to say, you know, because he was a driver, a pusher, and we used to get so, excuse the expression, pissed at him. And they used to, the media used to ask him, well, why do you drive them like that? He said, because that gives them one person that they all focus against and they all become together.
Yep.
And that's what his focus was. And he was right, because we didn't think about anything else but how we had to deal with him. And it got to the point where once we started playing better and started having success, he kind of eased off of it. And we almost kind of like, well, wait a minute, you got to get back to who you were.
Right. You know, there's another line or bit from the Austin Carr's episode that I thought was really critical. And if you didn't pay attention to it quickly, it could go by you without you really grabbing that lesson. Listen to what Austin says about he, as the number one draft choice, the star player, what he had to be willing to do. But the important thing was Coach Fitch communicated to him what he needed him to do. Take a look.
So he sat me down. He says, look, I'm going to have to I said, I'm not going to use you as an example, but I'm going to have to let them know that I'm going to treat you the same way I'm treating them. Otherwise, it's going to be hard for me to control them.
Yeah.
Then I said,
that's how you build a
okay.
team.
So
Right?
that's how you build a team. So he said, look, I might be a little tough on you, but I think you can handle that.
Yep.
And that's kind of what it was. I mean, and we went through that, and all the players used to always, like now, Camping them always teased me. He said, you was a coach's pet. I said, no. He always made me do extra. I always did extra. And I never complained because that was, he had already explained it to me.
Yep.
Communication is so important.
Amen. That was a really good example of the fact that sometimes you, as a well-recognized member of the group, the star player, maybe one of the best compensated people in the company, sometimes you have to take on some tough responsibility so that everyone understands that everyone needs to be held to the highest standard. And you, as the boss, Coach Fitch, in the latest example here with Austin, is sometimes he has to be willing to go to that star and say, hey, I'm gonna ask a little bit more of you, because if we ask a little bit more of you, it might be something that the other folks are willing to step up and do. That since the star's working at it a little bit more, maybe I need to step up my game. So let's go back real quick and think about, there are so many ways that you can work to bring your team together. So often I've believed that you have to assess where you are, that you need to build on past vivid recall of past successes of your team. I think sometimes people, when they go into a situation, they try to start everything from anew, as if we didn't have any history. Well, what history do we have? What can we build on? On the front of our winner's manual was, with tradition comes responsibility. Well, let's learn our tradition. I think that helps build this new team. So let's learn about our past. Let's assess where we are right now. Let's get a lot of collaboration. Let's get a lot of input. Let's get a lot of people as a part of the solution. Then, obviously, we got to be willing to work hard. You know, as evidenced by both Steve and Austin in this example, you've got to work at it. If you really want to reach your goals and become what you discussed collaboratively as you were going forward to try to build that team, that you've got to work at it. And sometimes there's tough decisions. Sometimes there's a change in path when you learn a little bit more about yourselves. I always felt that my coaches and my players really wanted to be evaluated. They really wanted to know, am I doing what needs to be done? Because I think they heard loudly how good we wanted to be and how good we thought they could be. So they wanted to be evaluated. And so I wouldn't hesitate to make sure that you spend a lot of time and effort, not only in putting the plan together and going to work and having that collaborative discussion, but along the way, make sure people know how they're doing, so that they can get better at something, or that they can maybe say, okay, I'm headed in the right direction. But above all else, I've grown to believe that you can't bring a team along until you convince them that they believe we can accomplish what we've said we want to be. And that is so critical. It's hard to put anything tangible on that. It's hard to really even put anything measurable on that belief phase. But if you're going to bring your team along, you have to make sure they believe that they can get there. The third concept we'd like to highlight from the last few episodes, and again, we appreciate you spending time with us in 2024, and we're going to get off to a fast start here in 2025. You know, there's always times in our lives where we think about what's next. It happens at different times in our lifetimes. And we're going to show you some clips from three young men, one from New Jersey, one from Texas, and one from Ohio, who came to university, did a great job playing college football, went on and played professional football for various length of times, but all found themselves at a moment in their late 20s, early 30s with, man, what am I going to do next? Let's get some of their thoughts, and then Afterwards, we'll talk a little bit about how we can maybe all confront that question. How can I figure out what's next?
Yeah, I think the hardest thing too is and what I'm trying to do now is change the type of team I've been on, because I do think that it's a bit of a trap that we fall into, people like athletes, coaches, military, where the majority of our identity has been wrapped around what we can do. And very little time is spent in asking the questions of like, who do I want to be, and how do I want to be? And so now we're in a situation, that's why I find myself where nobody's here to tell you what you are going to do. And in fact, what you do with your time is not who you are. Now I'm at a place where I want to make sure that what I do aligns with who I want to be. And I find a lot of people who aren't, I've been blessed to be in a situation where I can be patient and figure that out. A lot of people are not, and are in situations where they put a whole lot of time and effort in one direction only to do these things and not be the person that they want to be, where those two ideas are conflicting. And I think that's really at least the purpose of my life now, is how do I make sure that those two things stay in alignment, that my actions are always pushing me towards who I want to be. And then that is giving me a larger purpose than just, I can take my jersey off and have a sound mind about who I am and where I'm going, because everything I'm doing is still moving on in that direction. I can fail, I can succeed, and none of them are really wavering because I'm really just focused on who I am at this real moment. I think those are the conversations that are important. Those are the teams that I'm trying to find myself now, because it's a new language, right? There's not many people who are in that situation, and that requires you to find some new teammates sometimes.
Great words of wisdom and really thoughts from a guy who's going through it right now, Malcolm Jenkins, who was always a deep thinker, will always be a deep thinker, and he'll always want to figure out what he can do next for the good of the team, for the good of the whole, for the good of society. Let's watch a little bit and get the reflections from Bobby Carpenter and Anthony Schlegel.
When I got done playing, like so many people, and it's a military thing too, you've been part of teams your whole life. Right. So then you get out, and most of it is, what is the mission now? For so long, it's, here it is. Yeah. Let me solve a problem on how to do it. Now you have to figure out, what is the mission? That's far more difficult in life. And so when I got done, someone once told me, they're like, I don't know if it's you or who it was, someone goes, start a lot of fires and see what burns. But while you're doing that, like, I'm going to try to find ways to add value to myself. And I wanted to honestly go to school for the first time where I actually wanted to go to school and enjoy it. Like, that was a choice. Because I told my son, he's like, well, why did you want to go back? I'm like, one day you'll get to a point where I was like, I kind of miss the learning. I read books because I wanted to read books now. And so I wanted to go back and kind of challenge myself, see what that would look like. And I thought there was no negative to it. Like, what's the negative of learning more? So it was simply the opportunity cost of time, which, okay, I had some time, and other opportunities, which I was able to kind of negotiate things around and make it work and make life work. And it was hard, but I think there's always value in doing hard things. Yeah. And the more hard things you do, the better you get at it. And so that was a challenge. It was a scheduling thing. It was still easier than playing football and going to school. And I tell people that all the time. Because I had 3 kids, a job, and I was doing that in the morning. This is far easier than playing football and trying to do this. Like, it was maybe it's because I wanted to more.
One, Bob and I were doing it. It was fun because you had to do it with somebody that you care about. 2, college football was changing. Like, this is 2013 when Bob and I started. We graduated, I think, in the summer of 15, right? And I saw college football changing, and everybody had to have a master's degree now, like kind of in the sport. And again, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to have it as a master's of exercise phys or kinesiology or biomechanics or anything. There's a lot of people that just get sports management. And I was like, I don't really want to get a 1-year degree like sports management. I want to fill the toolbox and not necessarily pigeonhole myself, right? So I wanted to go get that. And I will say this, like, it was very difficult for me because I was also working 80 hours a week as a strength coach, and I would train 2 groups in the morning. I would go to like a 10 o'clock class, and then I would also go to night school after practice. So I would take anywhere, like, probably like 9 hours a semester, some more, some 12. But I'd be going to school 3 nights a week, but I read all the cases, right? We would talk about the cases. Like I just wanted to learn as much as I possibly can, because I wanted to reshape. I heard this from, I don't know, somebody was like, yeah, see things through a different prism. And I just needed some different lenses that I wanted to see. Like I knew the things that I was really good at, but I just needed some different lenses to get, a different 30,000 view look as to how a program could be run, because I just saw college football changing. I believe that the head strength coach is basically your chief operating officer. That's why I became one. Like they're with the dudes all the time.
Yep.
And then, now you also got to have marketing skills. Like how do I market to players what it is that I'm selling them to go to the depths that I want them to go to, right? And how do I market to a staff? How do I get $1 million budget to build out a weight room and actually do that appropriately while having a fiduciary responsibility to the people that donate that money and our university to spend it wisely, right? So I was like, that's why I went and got it, but it served so many great purposes. I mean, I still use it on a daily basis.
So as you listen to these 3 great young men talk about and consider, how do I figure out what's next? To me, that was always the fun of being an educator. I spent 48 years being an educator, probably more noted for the football games, but what was, in my mind, the most fun and the most important and the most critical in the lives of the young people we were around were the times away from the football field, so that we could prepare them for the rest of their lives. It didn't mean we prescribed them for the rest of their lives, so that we could prepare them, so that we could help them find out all that greatness within them. They all had it within them. So if we could help them find that greatness within them to go out and reach their full potential, become the type of people they would like to be, that they dreamed of being, do some of the things that they were dreaming of doing. And as you listen to all of them, especially Malcolm talked a lot about trying to figure out, I've had this prescription of what I do ever since I started playing organized sports, K through 12 school, organized sports, NFL, everything was prescribed. And now all of a sudden I have to make some decisions. Bobby and Anthony talked a little bit about the same, trying to figure out. It was fun listening to them talk about their interest in learning more, rather than maybe back in the days when they were told to learn some things. It wasn't quite as interesting as, hey, I'm interested in learning. But to me, the key thing that we tried to talk about constantly, and I've talked with a lot of businesses who have tried to implement a similar type thing. We had, and I brought this up to you folks before, the Block O of life, and we'll get a little bit closer up shot of that. But the Block O of life, we always wanted to begin with a conversation of who we are and not get confused that what we do is who we are. And you heard Malcolm talking a little bit about, the search for who you are. And so we had 3 different areas that we wanted our people to figure out who they were, whether it was who are they as a member of their family, who are they as a member of society with the blessings they've had, how can they do good things for others in society, and then who are they spiritually and morally and character-wise. And we wanted our people to spend a lot of time thinking about who they wanted to be outside of what they wanted to do. And then, of course, we set goals for what we want to do. And so I think as you're thinking through figuring out what's next, I think it's always healthy to first try to figure out, who is it that I would like to be? Why was I put on this earth? What is it that I would like others? How would I like to impact others? What is it that I would like to base my guardrails on ethically and morally and spiritually? How do I want to make sure I'm a positive member of my family? And then also, you've got to spend some time figuring out what is it I'd like to do next. And that was so much fun watching those highlights or film clips or whatever of three guys that they clearly did things that they were asked to do. They did it with great excellence. They did it with great passion. They did it as great team members. But now, of course, they find themselves in the next chapter of life trying to figure out what it is they'd like to do next. So I would encourage all of you that are supervisors to help your people grow, not only in what they do on behalf of your team, but who they are on behalf of society, the world. Spend some time with them on that. I'm a true believer that the harder we work on who we are, the more successful we'll be in what we do. And with that, we appreciate so much for you spending the first episode in 2025. And remember, it's all about the team.